Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to our session on the Community Wildfire Safety Program. My name is Dave Meyer, and I'm the Senior Manager for PG&E's Customer Emergency Operations Team, and I'll be moderating our webinar tonight from my home office in Sacramento County. We're here to share information about what we're doing to reduce wildfire risk and to make our system safer every day. First, a few housekeeping items for this presentation. If you'd like to receive the information we're providing tonight in another language, we'll be hosting translated presentations this summer. You can check pge.com/webinars for updated webinar schedules, including those webinars in other communities and in other languages. For tonight, if you'd like to view real-time closed captions in English, Spanish, or Chinese, you can click the CC button in the bottom right corner of your screen. And then you can change the playback language for those captions by clicking settings and adjusting the captions and subtitles languages there. So CC button in the bottom right corner, and then settings to adjust which language you're seeing those captions in. We want to make sure you have an opportunity to ask questions tonight and give us your feedback. The presentation portion of this session will be about 30 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. If you'd like to ask a question, you can submit it at any time via the chat feature. The questions only come through on our end, so don't be alarmed if you aren't seeing questions from others. We'll step through them and answer them live at the end of the presentation. And if for some reason we're not able to get to your question today, please feel free to reach out to our dedicated email address for the Community Wildfire Safety Program, and that's wildfiresafety@pge.com, and our team will collect up an answer and respond back to you. One moment here. Apologies, didn't want to cough in everyone's ear. We'll be recording tonight's presentation and we'll post it along with the slides to our website at pge.com/webinars. It does take us about a week to get everything packaged up and posted to the web. So give us about a week and then you can check pge.com/webinars for this session. So with that, I want to start the webinar like we start all of our meetings at PG&E with a quick safety moment. As we head into wildfire season, we want to encourage everyone to be prepared for natural disasters or any type of emergency by building a supply kit for you, your family, or your business. Make sure you include food, water, medication, flashlights, a first aid kit, and really importantly, a list of emergency contacts, anything else you might need for your personal situation to keep you and your family or those around you safe. For information on how to prepare for any emergency, you can visit safetyactioncenter.pge.com. Now that we're off to a safe start, we will move into the presentation. So today we're going to talk about how we identify wildfire risk and reduce that risk through our Community Wildfire Safety Program. The wildfire safety work in your community, which includes undergrounding, overhead system hardening, vegetation management, and improvements we're making for situational awareness. We'll have an overview of our enhanced power line safety settings program and our public safety power shutoffs, and we'll cover resources that are available to our customers. As we jump in, I'd like to introduce you to our PG&E team. Joining me this evening, we have Teresa Alvarado, our Regional Vice President for the South Bay and Central Coast region. We have Matt Schneiderman, who's our Regional Senior Manager for South Bay and Central Coast region. Dan Kieferl, who's our Regional Safety Director for the region, is having some technical issues. He may join us here this evening. We will see. If not, we'll cover for him. And last but not least, we have Eric Daniels, who's our Local Government Affairs Representative for San Luis Obispo County. So let's discuss our Community Wildfire Safety Program and the tools we use to reduce the risk of wildfire in your communities. I'd like to turn it over to Teresa, our Regional Vice President.
Thanks very much, Dave. Thank you, all of you, for joining us tonight. My name is Teresa Alvarado. I'm the Vice President for the South Bay and Central Coast region. And the first step in making your community safer is to identify where wildfire risk is greatest. Our high fire risk map provides us with an understanding of exactly where risk exists in Santa Cruz and San Luis Obispo counties. Once we've identified the potential risk, we then target our wildfire mitigation efforts into the highest risk areas. So we launched our community wildfire safety program in 2018 to help customers and communities feel safe and in the growing wildfire risk and understanding of the growing wildfire risk in our state. Over the past 5 years, we've made significant progress in making our system safer for our customers. We're preventing wildfires by strengthening the system with stronger poles and covered power lines, by keeping trees a safe distance from power lines, by undergrounding 10,000 miles of power lines, and by implementing public safety power shutoffs as a tool of last resort when people's safety, livelihoods, homes, and businesses may be in danger of wildfires. We're reducing the impact of outages by making safety settings even smarter and using new technologies to better target our safety work. You're going to hear more about that in a bit. And we're providing resources more effectively by sharing additional information through online tools, expanding support for our most vulnerable and highly impacted customers, and exploring new partnerships with community-based organizations. We're working hard to reduce risk, and we know we have a lot more to do. But since launching our community wildfire and safety program, our efforts have eliminated 90% of the wildfire risk from our system. It's absolutely remarkable. Our wildfire prevention work includes regular ongoing inspections and patrols to help keep trees and other vegetation a safe distance from power lines. We inspect approximately 100,000 miles of overhead power lines across our service territory every year, with some locations patrolled multiple times a year. We've also improved and refined programs and implemented technology that helps us to better monitor, forecast, and respond to wildfire risk. We've built and installed our own network of high-definition cameras and weather stations to better predict and respond to severe weather events. These give us insight into high fire risk areas and improve our weather forecasting capabilities. And our wildfire prevention efforts also include partnerships with CAL FIRE, the U.S. Forest Service, and local fire departments. We're making progress every day on our commitment to rebuild our electric system from the underground up to prevent wildfires and improve reliability for our customers. We're strengthening our poles again, covering power lines, and the undergrounding work those are all key components. And while we rebuild the system over the next several years, we're also taking immediate steps to keep customers safe by turning off power during severe weather to help prevent wildfires. We know that losing power disrupts lives. Absolutely. It can even be dangerous to have your power cut off. But through advancing technology, including enhanced safety settings on power lines and sectionalizing devices that will separate the grid into smaller sections, we're lessening the impact of wildfire safety power outages and the impact they have on customers. The solutions that we've put in place have already made the system safer and will continue to work every day to deliver safe and reliable energy to our hometowns. So now I'll turn the presentation over to Matt Schneiderman, your regional senior manager, to discuss the work that we're doing to improve reliability and lower the risk of wildfire in the community. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Teresa, and good evening, everybody. Before we continue with the presentation, I just wanted to remind folks that we do have an option to participate in our session tonight in American Sign Language. We had some technical difficulties earlier, but you should be able to access the translation link within the chat. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. So moving on, so here you can see a map of our completed and planned work in and around your community. We're going to discuss each of our community wildfire and safety programs in more depth, but the slide provides an overview of the work being done in your communities. Those include planned and completed undergrounding miles, planned and completed overhead system hardening miles, sectionalizing devices that we've installed, weather stations that we've installed, as well as high definition cameras, which we've also installed. As you can see, we're prioritizing wildfire safety work in the highest risk areas within the community. So our work to minimize wildfires really doesn't ever stop. We continue working with you and your community to manage and keep the trees at a safe distance from our power lines. As Teresa mentioned, we inspect about 100,000 miles of overhead power lines per year. We also prune and cut down more than 1 million trees that are unsafe, We address dead and dying and hazard trees, and we do more trimming in places that have had high volume or vegetation caused outages. Together, this work reduces wildfire risk, improves reliability for our customers, and makes our electric system stronger. We also conduct vegetation work across our service area to keep trees a safe distance from power lines. In non-high fire threat districts, we work year-round to meet state standards, as well as to maintain a minimum of 1.5 feet clearance around the lines. Now, in our high fire threat districts, we complete the same year-round work, as well as doing additional inspections and tree pruning or removals to keep greater clearances and lower wildfire risk. This includes maintaining a minimum of 4 feet clearance around the lines and removing trees that pose a safety concern. Because of our work, you may see PG&E and contractor trucks and crews in your neighborhood to keep the trees and brush away from the electric lines and equipment. If you'd like more information on the vegetation management work that we are doing, you can do that at our website. It's pge.com/trees. Now, we're definitely committed to partnering with our customers and our communities on all of this important safety work. If any safety work is planned on your property, you can expect an advance notification either by text message or by email. You might see crews conducting inspections, which would include PG&E or contract inspectors looking at your trees or shrubs to identify any safety concerns. You may see them doing tree work, such as trimming or removing trees that we've identified as a safety concern during inspections. Or you might see us making safety and quality checks, which includes crew performing follow-up inspections to make sure our work meets the required safety standards. We are reducing wildfire risk by strengthening poles and covering power lines as well. We call this overhead system hardening. And over the past 5 years, we've completed 38 overhead system hardening mile lines within Santa Cruz County and an additional 20 overhead system hardening line miles in San Luis Obispo County. This year, we're working towards additional overhead system hardening projects, totaling 2 miles in Santa Cruz County and 15 miles for the San Luis Obispo County. Next year, we're forecasting an additional 2 miles in Santa Cruz County and 10 miles in San Luis Obispo County. It's important to note that the work plans are subject to change. Projects can move to future years, and they do occasionally fall out of scope as well. If the planned work is not completed during the year it was originally identified, it typically will continue through planning and construction phases during the subsequent years. The system hardening work will occur over several years in the highest fire threat areas, so we can first help reduce the risk of wildfire. We can also enhance long-term safety, especially during times of high fire threat, significantly improve reliability during winter weather, and in certain cases, reduce public safety power shutoffs. So, to give us insight into high fire risk areas and improve weather forecasting capabilities, we've also built and installed our own network of high definition cameras and weather stations to better predict and respond to severe weather threats. Last year, we reached our goal of 600 total high definition cameras installed, which allow us the ability to see more than 90% of the high fire risk areas that we serve. Our Hazard Awareness and Warning Center also monitors and uses these cameras to help prevent and respond to wildfires. We also allow CAL FIRE to control the cameras as needed. Last year, we installed 1 weather station and 3 high definition cameras specifically in Santa Cruz County, and another 2 weather stations and 3 high definition cameras in the San Luis Obispo counties. If you're interested, you can also see the cameras and the stations installed in areas surrounding both communities by visiting pge.com/weather. So let's talk a little bit about undergrounding miles. So we are prioritizing undergrounding of course, in areas where we can have the greatest impact on reducing the wildfire risk and wildfire safety related power outages for our customers. Once a circuit is selected for undergrounding, we evaluate each proposed project with a focus on mitigating the maximum amount of risk, both effectively and efficiently. Last year, we completed 1 mile of undergrounding in Santa Cruz County and less than a mile of undergrounding in San Luis Obispo County. In Santa Cruz County, we're currently working towards projects which total 2 additional miles this year, with additional 3 miles forecasted for next year. As we look to future years, we've identified the potential for additional undergrounding work in both Santa Cruz County and around Santa Cruz Mountains specifically. In San Luis Obispo County, we have less than 1 mile of undergrounding forecasted for next year. As with some of the other resources, the maps of undergrounding work throughout our service area and more program information can be found on our website at pge.com/undergrounding. Before moving on from undergrounding, I would also like to note, as previously, that some of these forecasts can change, and especially given the long lead time that undergrounding projects require for both planning and construction. In some cases, projects can move to future years or occasionally fall out of scope. If the planned work is not completed during the year originally identified, it typically continues through the planning and construction phases during subsequent years. We'll continue to share updated details related to undergrounding work in the future. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Dave to talk to you about wildfire safety outages.
Thanks, Matt. So next, we'll be sharing more about potential wildfire safety outages and some important updates for this year. In 2021, we started a pilot of about 170 circuits in the highest fire risk areas, and we installed more sensitive safety settings there. We call them enhanced power line safety settings. So these settings automatically turn off power within about 1/10 of a second if there's some sort of problem, to help stop wildfires before they have a chance to start. By reducing the amount of time that a fault is on the system, like a tree branch, for example, that's touching a line here in this graphic, the less amount of time that exists, the less energy is released, and that means there's a reduced chance of an ignition. In 2022, we expanded enhanced power line safety settings to protect every customer who lives in a high fire risk area. And last year, we continued to see elevated fire risk throughout the year. And despite that higher risk, there was a 68% reduction in reportable ignitions and a 99% reduction in ignition impact last year, meaning that nearly all fires that started were smaller and impacted a smaller number of acres, despite the very dry conditions we had all of last year. So if there's a hazard and the power is automatically turned off, we then check the line for damage, make sure it's safe before we turn the power back on. And those patrols to assess the system, check the lines, are done on the ground via foot, via vehicle, or in the air via helicopter. All right, so 100% of the electric circuits in the high fire risk areas in the 2 counties we're talking about tonight, Santa Cruz and San Luis Obispo counties, those are protected by these enhanced safety settings. And so we'll show a map here in a moment to help you see where those high fire risk areas are for those who may not be as familiar. But while these settings definitely make the electric system safer, customers may experience unplanned power outages. If there's an outage on an EPSS protected line, our patrol crews work to identify the cause, repair the damage, and get the power back on for customers. We also do a detailed outage review that helps us identify what caused that outage and look for opportunities to improve reliability as we go into the future. That review really helps us determine the steps we can take to minimize the impact of outages, right? How big they are, how long they are, and overall improve reliability for our customers as we go through the future. So here, on the right here, you can see an overview of the identified causes of outages for customers in Santa Cruz and San Luis Obispo counties. from 2021 to through the first quarter, the end of March in 2023. In some cases, we're not able to determine the cause of an outage, whether that's has enhanced power line safety settings or not. These undetermined causes might be the result of something like a branch or an animal that contacted the power line, and then when our crews arrive, they can't find it. So think of a branch that falls across two wires, that causes a fault, the system's de-energized to prevent an ignition, and then that branch or stick falls to the ground. Our crews may not see that or be able to tell that it had a mark on it to know that was the cause of that outage. So that's an example of an unknown cause outage. And those accounted for about 44% of all outages in Santa Cruz and San Luis Obispo counties. All right, so as we go to the next slide here, we're committed to keeping customers protected from wildfires while also delivering reliable energy. So every step of the way, we're improving our efforts to keep the power on, but without sacrificing safety. We're aware, very well aware, that some customers in Santa Cruz and San Luis Obispo counties have experienced multiple outages, and we're working hard to reduce those impacts, both the number of outages and the overall length of those interruptions. We definitely understand how difficult it can be to lose power at your home or at your business. So as I mentioned, after outages on lines with EPSS settings, our team conducts the detailed outage review to find those common causes and then find ways to reduce impacts on our customers going forward. That's the lines you see here, the bluish green colored lines are circuits where we've taken some of those actions to do detailed reviews and look for ways to improve reliability in the future. Some of those actions in your specific communities, we've installed fault indicators to speed up our restoration process. Those are essentially little lights that sit on the overhead line, and they help our crews quickly identify where a fault may have occurred. The faster they can find it, the faster they can get power back on. We've adjusted the sensitivity of our safety settings. We've installed bird and animal guards to keep them safely away from the power lines. We've trimmed trees near power lines. And in some instances, like there's an area in San Luis Obispo County, kind of the Avila Beach to basically Spyglass area, we identified some equipment that needed to be addressed last year. It was actual equipment failures that were causing the problem. So we made a series of repairs, did some equipment replacement, because that was what was needed in that community to specifically address the situation that was having there. So the actions we're taking are tailored to and specific to the cause of the outages in that particular community. In addition, we're taking actions to improve reliability across the entire service territory. We're installing sectionalizing devices. Those help us essentially break the grid into smaller chunks. So when an outage occurs, it impacts fewer customers, and it also gives us more options to restore customers more quickly. And we're temporarily transferring some customers to different circuits where that makes sense and where the capacity of the system can handle that to further decrease the impact when there are repeat outages. And although some areas saw challenges with reliability, over 80% of our customers across our service territory experienced 2 or less outages while being protected by EPSS in 2022. All right, now we're going to share information about public safety power shutoffs. So when there are really high winds, that can cause debris or tree branches to come in contact with the energized electric lines. That can damage the equipment and potentially lead to a wind-driven wildfire. So as a result, we may need to turn off power during the really severe weather to help prevent wildfires. And that's what we call a public safety power shutoff, or PSPS. For the safety of our customers and the communities we serve, PSPS continues to be a tool and a necessary tool that's one we use as a last resort during that really significant severe weather. And every wildfire season is different. We received lots of rain and snow over the past 3 months, but we know the dry conditions of late summer and fall are still a risk that's to come as we move through the rest of this year. So the actual real-time conditions, that's what's going to determine if we need to shut off power to ensure safety through our PSPS program. So we review wildfire risk daily and determine what the appropriate actions are. For EPSS, if conditions are not don't meet the need of the enhanced settings, then those settings are disabled to prevent unnecessary outages that may impact our customers. We activate EPSS when we have a combination of dry fuels, low relative humidity, and wind plays a factor as well, but less so than PSPS. And similarly, on the other side, we review a combination of factors when deciding if we need to turn off the power for PSPS as well. So that includes low humidity levels, typically 30% and below, forecasted high winds, sustained winds above about 19 miles an hour, and gusts in the 30 to 40 mile an hour range. We're looking for a red flag warning declared by the National Weather Service. And then the condition of the dry material on the ground and the moisture content of the vegetation in the area. And lastly, we use real-time observations from our crews and some specialized folks we have across our service territory. Those are all taken into account because we recognize it's a very impactful decision to turn off the power to our customers. So we take multiple factors into account when determining whether or not a PSPS event may be necessary. The notifications that customers receive also vary between these two types of outages. Because outages on EPSS power lines are automatic, they're the result of an actual fault, we aren't able to give our customers any advance notice. But customers can expect automated calls, texts, and emails that'll acknowledge the outage and give them an estimate of when the power will be back on. And then after that initial notification, we'll send crews to assess the power lines and check the equipment. They may revise the estimated time for the power to be restored, right? If there's damage they find, like for example, a big tree fell through a line, that's going to take additional time and they'll update customers with that information. Then they make the repairs and they restore power and we send a notification that power has been restored. Because PSPS, on the other hand, is based on weather, we can typically see it coming. So we have the opportunity to inform customers in advance. So those notifications go out to our agency partners, County Office of Emergency Services, for example, and our customers during key milestones as we get closer to the event. So typically about 2 days before power goes off is when we send our first notification to customers. We do it again about 1 day before, and then 1 to 4 hours before the power is actually turned off, we send another message. And the tone of that changes a little bit from we may need to turn off power to being more direct, we plan to turn off power. When we get 1 to 4 hours away, we have pretty good clarity from our meteorology team, an understanding of what the risk looks like. Then we send the notification when the power is actually turned off. When the weather's passed, we send another notification. We call that an all clear. Really, that's from a weather perspective. Once the conditions go back down below those PSPS thresholds, we want customers to be aware of that. And then we provide updates if the restoration timeline changes. And then finally, a notification once power has been restored. So these notifications go out via call, text, and or email. If we have multiple numbers for a customer, we'll try multiple numbers. If we have your email address, we will try to reach you there as well to make sure that customers are informed. All the notifications, starting with that one that's about 1 to 4 hours before the shutoff event, those will be sent both day and night if we need to make sure customers are aware. For customers who aren't a PG&E account holder or who want to receive a notification for some other location, might be your workplace, your child's school, something like that, a parent's house, we have address alerts, and you can sign up for address alerts as well, which are available in 16 languages, and those go out via call or text. We encourage all of our customers to review the contact information we have on file. You can visit pge.com/mywildfirealerts, and that will be your location to review the information we have and make any updates that are needed so that we can make sure we get a hold of you in the event of any outage, PSPS or otherwise. We also provide updates at pge.com. We provide them to local news and radio outlets and through social media in the event of a PSPS. For information on any outage status, or to see upcoming potential PSPS events, our outage center at pge.com/outages is the place to go to see both of those pieces of information, both outages you may be experiencing now and what the restoration time is, as well as forecasted PSPS events. So with that, I'll hand it over to Eric Daniels, who will talk about some of the resources available in your community. You're on mute, Eric.
My apologies, everyone. Thanks, Dave. My name is Eric Daniels, and I'm the local government relations representative for PG&E in the San Luis Obispo County area. And sometimes I cover my colleague in Santa Cruz. We know power outages have an impact on you and in your community, and we want you to know that support is available. So as we go to the next slide, during a PSPS, we open local community resource centers where you can access resources, a safe location to meet basic power needs like changing medical equipment, charging medical equipment and electronic devices, up-to-date information about PSPS, and water, snacks, and other essential items. You can find a community resource center near them during a PSPS by visiting pge.com/CRC. We are working with the California Foundation of Independent Living Centers and 16 participating disability disaster access and resource centers to provide support during and before and during public safety power shutoffs. This includes hotel stays, food stipends, and transportation as needed for eligible customers with access and functional needs. If you or other members of your household depend on electricity for medical needs, please reach out to your local Disability Disaster Access and Resource Center prior to any PSPS being called in your area and ask for assistance. We're continuing to provide portable batteries to customers and refrigeration for medication as part of the Portable Battery Program and the Disability Disaster Access and Resource Program. Since the program's inception in 2020, PG&E has distributed more than 18,000 portable batteries to eligible customers. For this year, changes to our backup and power programs include increased funding and expansion of eligibility for the generator and battery rebate program for customers who live in Tier 2 and 3 high fire threat districts and or are served by circuits protected by enhanced power line safety settings. We have expanded eligibility for the portable battery program. This program is available for medical baseline and self-identified vulnerable customers with assistive technology or durable medical equipment who experienced at least one public safety power shutoff in 2021 or 5 or more outages on an EPSS protected circuit in 2022. You can also visit pge.com/portable battery for more information on eligibility requirements. Last year, PG&E developed a meter design to help customers use backup power during power outages and emergencies. These meters provide a safe and convenient way to connect portable generators to your home in just a few minutes. This program is free to customers with the portable generator. We will be reopening the application process for eligible customers later this year. So please, if you're interested, please find more information available at pge.com/transfer meter. We provide financial incentives for eligible customers through the Self-Generation Incentive Program. This program offers rebates to save on energy storage systems in your home and at your business. Whether an outage is planned or unplanned, a battery would allow you to have a backup power for your home and or your business and potentially reduce your energy costs. If you're interested in more information, please visit pge.com/SGIP. I'll now turn it back over to Dave, or is it going to be Daniel? Because I think Daniel's now joined us, I'm not sure, who will share more customer safety resources. I guess it's going to be you, Dave.
Yeah, we may not have Dan, so I'll jump right back in. Thanks, Eric. So along with the resources we've already discussed today, we have some additional information here. Customer resources and information about our overall wildfire safety efforts can be found at pge.com/wildfire safety. In addition, for our customers who rely on power for their health, for their safety, we are partnering with the California network of 211s to provide help to those who need it the most. 211 is a free, confidential calling and texting service, and it provides 24/7 connections to local resources in your community. It may be PG&E resources, your local government resources, or community-based organizations, but 211 is really the one place to help connect customers, any customer, with resources that may help them minimize hardships that can be caused by power outages. I also want to highlight our Report It Safety app that provides an opportunity for customers to report and submit photos of non-emergency concerns directly to us. It's as simple as downloading the app, taking a photo, a few sentences describing what it is, and then our team will review, and you can see the follow-up that takes place through the app as well. You can also prepare for wildfire season by visiting safetyactioncenter.pge.com to find videos and information about the customer support we've talked about tonight, plus others, our safety programs, and general preparedness tips for wildfire season. All right, as a reminder, we will have this presentation posted to the PG&E website at pge.com/webinars in about a week or so, along with a recording of the event. Okay, so throughout this presentation, we've been receiving some really good questions from you all. Reminder, you can submit questions by clicking on the Q&A box on your screen, and we're going to do our best to answer all the questions we receive. If for some reason we don't get to your question tonight, or if you have a really specific question about your home, your business, you can reach out to our dedicated email address. That's wildfiresafety@pge.com, and we will respond promptly to you. Okay, so I am going to kick us off here with the first few questions. And Scott, I'm going to come to you first. There are two of them. They're very similar, so I'm going to combine them both. And Scott, remind me, you might have to introduce yourself, because I think we didn't introduce you in the beginning. The questions are, if you see a branch within 4 feet of a power line, how do you report it? Or if you see something contacting a power line, right, a more significant safety issue, or a tree may be actually hitting the line, what should customers do if they see that situation?
Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Scott Carlton, and I'm a vegetation program manager supervisor in Central Coast Division. So that would be Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito counties. So we have 2 different minimum clearance requirements that we're regulated to maintain. So if we're in the state responsibility area or high fire threat district, that would be 4 feet. Or in the local responsibility area, it'd be 18 inches. So in this instance, and as per the question here, vegetation is found to be within 4 feet. If a property owner observes that, the best thing they can do is call 1-800-PGE-5000, and a troubleman will essentially come out and take a look at the site and just make sure that the lines that the customer is looking at are indeed PG&E power lines and not communication lines or some other line that's not PG&E. So being within 4 feet, that's what we would call a non-compliance tree, and calling 1-800-PGE 5000, having a troubleman come out, and then the troubleman will route that to the vegetation management program, and we would have one of our inspecting arborists come out, take a look at it, confirm that it's within 4 feet, and then we have a short timeline that we're regulated to essentially mitigate that vegetation that's within 4 feet. We'd send a tree crew out and they would trim or remove the branch so that it's adequately clear and compliant to the high voltage power lines. In the other situation, if vegetation is actually making contact with high voltage lines, so typically in most cases that's going to be distribution or primary lines, 4 kV, 12 kV, 21 kV, we consider that an immediate hazard, and we are required by the CPUC, and it's built into our program to address that within 24 hours. So if anybody sees any vegetation making contact with any power lines, it's best just to call the 1-800-PGE 5000 number, have a troubleman validate that, and if it's making contact, we'll send a tree crew right away and trim that tree or remove that tree back away and address that public safety hazard.
Thank you, Scott, for that answer. Always appreciate the detail our vegetation management team can provide that the rest of us typically can't. I'll call out as well, if there are non-emergencies, right? Tree touching a line, call that in so we can get someone out there immediately. But for non-emergencies, our Report It app is a great place for customers to highlight those things and raise them to our attention. You know, we drive the same routes to and from work and to the store, things like that every day. If you see that thing, that transformer, that pole wasn't normally leaning like that, something looks different, and you want to raise that potential concern to us, the Report It app is a great place to do it, but it's not for emergencies. Please call us at 1-800-743-5000 if there are any type of emergencies, or you can also call 911 for situations like arcing power lines. All right, next question here. I'm going to combine two of them again. The question's about how we measure wildfire reduction risk, and actually a really insightful question. How do you measure something that didn't happen? So if power was tripped, how do we know that branch that hit the line would have caused a fire? And the short answer is we can't prove that an ignition would have occurred because there's an outage. But what we can do is we know the circuits where we're doing things like installing covered conductor, putting lines underground, or using the enhanced power line safety settings. In addition, we know where damages occur after a PSP during the high winds of a PSPS event. So we can look at, I'll take the EPSS program as an example. We look at the lines that have those settings on them and the outages that occur. And we can look back before we had EPSS. Typically, we use that 2018 to 2021 time period, that 3-year period, and 2020, 18, 19, 20, that 3-year period. And we can look at across these same lines when they didn't have settings, what type of outages occurred, what was the percentage of those that resulted in an ignition, and then we can compare that to what we're seeing now that we have the safety settings in place. So that's more of a comparing to historical averages to determine what that reduction is compared to the past. I think anecdotally as well, while it doesn't translate into numbers, if you visit our EPSS website, pge.com/EPSS, there's some videos toward the bottom of the screen where we used our testing lab, and actually it shows side-by-side testing of lines when the settings are in place versus when they're not in place. And you can see in dry grass, when tree branches touch, in a lab scenario, how that ignition could result in a fire versus something very small that almost puts itself out or can be easily managed. So well, I can't answer exactly how we prove that negative. I hope that helps with understanding how we look at the past compared to what we're seeing going forward to determine wildfire risk reduction. All right, second question here is related to more about storms and outside of fire season. So Jody asks us to help her understand the changes that PG&E's made, or if we've made changes during winter storms, recognizing that there may have maybe longer duration outages now than what used to be in the past. Specifically saying that outages that would last maybe an hour are lasting several hours now. So a couple different things. I think in as a whole, we haven't made wholesale changes outside of fire season in storms in particular. We do in the kind of what we call the shoulder seasons, kind of where we are now. We're not at peak wildfire risk, but we're also not in a stormy season, right? So that April, May, probably April, May, not quite into June. We're starting to move into the peak there. Again, we see it in end of November and into December. We do a couple different things. One is disabling what we call reclosing. So there's some of the devices on our system, if they sense a fault, they open to de-energize the line. In a winter storm condition, they'll try to close on their own a couple times and re-energize that line. We disable that outside of the we didn't outside of storm season into wildfire season. And then secondly, what may happen if we have EPSS settings in place, because these smart devices that can take these settings, there are fewer of them on the system. That means sometimes outages can be larger than they would have been without enhanced power line safety settings. So then being a little larger, impacting a larger area, that means there's more area for our crews to patrol and ensure it's safe before they re-energize. But that's also more of a wildfire scenario, not specifically for storms. So I think I may kick it over to Matt to see if he has anything else he may want to add for this area.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I mean, I think you covered it from an EPSS standpoint. And I know this discussion is related really to wildfire, but what I will say is this year was a bit of an anomaly, or we hope it was an anomaly. There were, 15-ish atmospheric rivers, and there was a lot of damage this year. So we also did see a lot of extended outages, and we recognize that. Along with our wildfire and system hardening work, we also learn a lot from the storms, and frankly rebuilt quite a bit of our system during that. So, the hope is that you won't see outages lasting 3 to 4 hours. But the key for this particular webinar, when those EPSS settings are in play, we have to inspect the entire circuit. And that's, to ensure that we don't miss anything that could potentially start a wildfire. That's pretty much all I have, Dave. Hopefully we answered the question.
Thanks, Matt. I'm going to take a question. Michelle asked a question about the backup power transfer meter, and I know Liz on our team is going to reach out and follow up specifically on your address. But I think it's a question we've heard more than once, asking about the transfer meter and how do you qualify? How do you request this? How do you submit your request? The website pge.com/transfer meter is the place that has all the information about the meter. Now, there are requirements. There are certain specifics about kind of the layout where your meter is versus your gas meter. Several things that need to be right, for lack of a better term, right? That need to meet these criteria for us to be able to install one of those backup power transfer meters. So that's a challenge, I think, for some customers, and why the transfer meter is not a solution we can put in place for them. I also want to point out, secondly, the button on the website to actually submit your request or your application for the meter is currently disabled. What happened was we moved into the end of last year and then came into the significant storms the last 3 months. We got a backlog of those requests while our crews were out trying to make repairs and respond to the storms. So we didn't want to put customers in a situation where they applied and it was several months before we could actually get to them. So for the next few months, we have disabled the ability to request while we work through that backlog, and then we'll re-enable that on our website for customers to be able to put in their request for a backup power transfer meter. Okay, let me go back. I think there's another question here for Scott. Question about once we remove trees or vegetation, what's PG&E's responsibility to actually take that wood off site?
So every situation is unique, depending on whether we're removing trees as part of our maintenance program or whether we're trimming branches back away from the power lines to maintain our minimum clearance requirements, or we're cutting trees that have defects or are dead or pose a risk of failing and falling into the power lines, or we're doing restoration work, clearing trees off power lines during a storm event. Typically, when it comes to slash, branches, limbs, we're putting that in the chipper and broadcasting the chips back into the back of the chip truck and hauling it off site. If we're doing vegetation management in an area that is not accessible to a chipper, then we use a method called lopping and scattering, which is a method approved and vetted by the California Forest Practice Rules. So we essentially run our chainsaws through the slash and get it to where it's making contact with the ground and there isn't a lot of airspace between the slash for oxygen in the event that a fire were to come through from whatever cause. When we cut dead trees down that are owned by the public, we typically will cut the tree down, either chip or lop and scatter the brush, and then we'll leave the log material on site for the property owner. It's not our property. We don't want to presume that we should be taking that property that isn't ours off site. We're also conscientious of not spreading diseases, forest disease around from neighborhood to neighborhood. Some tree pathogens like sudden oak death are only common in certain areas, and if we spread that wood around and take it off site, we're essentially spreading that disease. So for the most part, we're keeping it on site. In the event of a storm situation where time is of the essence, and if there's a tree on the power lines, we're cutting that tree off the lines, moving the material out of the way, making sure that it's not on a road or in a creek or in a water course or a drainage, and leaving it there for the property owner to dispose of as they see fit.
Thanks, Scott. And I know sometimes we get questions about tree trimmings or wood that, especially in an emergency situation, may be left on a neighboring property. If that's a situation that a customer sees, that's something you can call in to us, 800-743-5000, 5000. If you think, hey, you left my neighbor's tree, fell onto my property or scattered on my property, let us know about that situation and we can have someone go out and assess and then make whatever corrections we need to make to ensure we're not impacting a customer who it may not be their tree. We have one other question about how we designate high risk. That's a little bit of a nuanced question, but I'll do my best and see if our team wants to jump in. So we begin with the California Public Utilities Commission has a map that they call the high fire threat districts. It breaks high fire risk areas into two tiers, tier 2 and tier 3, they call them. One is an elevated risk and tier 3 is an extreme risk. So we began with that. It takes into account population centers, fire risk, ingress and egress, a whole number of things to determine where risk is the highest. We started there and in some areas have have made that a little larger, what we call internally at PG&E, the high fire risk areas. Those are areas where we recognize that a fire occurring there could quickly move into the highest risk areas and lead to a potentially catastrophic wildfire. So when we're talking about the programs that cover the high fire risk areas, those areas have begun with the CPUC's map, and then using our expertise and the expertise of local fire partners to determine where we need to target our safety programs and our wildfire safety program as a whole. All right, I'm going to take a pause here. I haven't seen any new questions come in, but you can choose the Q&A icon on your screen if you have a question you'd like to ask us. And then again, we do have phone number on the bottom of the screen here. And the best place, in my opinion, is our dedicated email box, wildfiresafety@pge.com. If you have questions you don't want to ask tonight, don't get a chance to ask, or if you have something very specific you want to work through with one of our team members. I'm not seeing any other questions. All right, then we'll let everyone get back to their evening. I do want to thank you for being here and joining our webinar tonight. We look to welcome your feedback as we continue to expand our programs, our wildfire safety program, and work to keep our communities and the customers we have the privilege of serving safe. Before we close, I do want to turn it back over to Teresa, our Regional Vice President, for any closing she may have for our customers. She may have frozen now that I said that, so I'll take that back and I'll do it on her behalf. Again, thank you. Reach out to our team, wildfiresafety@pge.com, if you have any needs or things you weren't able to answer. And with that, thank you again and have a safe evening.